Hi, Ray Poynter here, and today we're going to be looking at a really difficult topic. What is the role of brands and insights during a pandemic? Or what now for all of us on the line here today? So here's my agenda. You don't need to worry too much about the details, other than the very last one, Q&A. So I have a presentation, shouldn't last too long, but then we've got time for an extended Q&A. I'm here to answer as many of your questions as I can, and those I can't, I will try to find solutions for later. Perhaps the best, most important starting point is that we're in a new normal. We don't know how long the world will be in the state it is now. We don't know how severe the economic recession is going to be. We don't know how many people are going to die. We don't know how much of the world is going to stay in lockdown. So a lot of don't knows there. We don't know the rules. We don't know how advertising is going to work during this new normal. We don't know how research will best function during this new normal. There are so many rules of business which could be different now. We don't know. So this new normal isn't a different state from a state that we're used to. It's not that we've gone from A and we're now in B. We've gone from A to a situation of not knowing where we are and how much it's changing. And it's an indefinite new normal. We are not likely to know about the current situation for weeks, maybe months, possibly years. So we need to just operate in this new normal until we move into another steady state. Hopefully that steady state will be the other side. The pandemic will be under some sort of control. We'll be coming out of the recession. But let's not focus too much on what the world is going to be like afterwards. We have to deal with this new normal here and now. And it really is a tremendously scary place. You are going to see a lot of data about things that are changing. Things that we would not have thought possible 2 or 3 weeks ago. We're now looking at enormous numbers of cases around the world, enormous numbers of deaths. So we've got to get on with our day-to-day life, even though occasionally we'll be looking at these sorts of charts and perhaps remembering with a sense of humour that actually most of us are not experts in exponential graphs. I think it's important to remember that this is not just a recession. Sometimes when I talk to economists over the past week or two, they have been focusing on other recessions. How does it compare with this recession? How does it compare with that recession? But it's not just a recession. First of all, we've got to realise the driving thing is this COVID-19. How long will it be a problem? We don't know. If we go back in history, Spanish flu lasted 2 years, which was 3 winters. It was Northern Hemisphere's winter first, went down south, came back up the following winter, went down south to the Southern Hemisphere, came back the following winter. We could find that happens this time. SARS, by contrast, just lasted 1 year. So maybe that will be the pattern, particularly with all the work that's being done on vaccines and antibody tests and so on. The impact on people is unbelievable. Evidently something like 1/3 of the world's population are currently in lockdown. If you had told me that 10 days ago, I don't think I would have believed it. That is how fast things are changing. Millions and millions of people are being laid off from work. Some of them are having money still. They're being paid by their employer. They're being paid by the government. Some have got no money and are in dire straits. There are millions of people working from home. And of course, what's interesting about them is that they're still getting their salaries and their wages, but they're hardly spending any money. Now we can see that is going to create a pool of money that some people will have going forward that others won't have. And millions of people are working absolutely flat out, and they're working at risk. So we're talking about nurses, police, the checkout operators in supermarkets, all sorts of people that are keeping the world ticking over. And they're not spending money either. So again, we're going to get this accumulated pool of money for some people and not for other people. Organisations. There are now so many organisations and companies that are simply not trading. Think about all those ski resorts in Italy and elsewhere. Cinemas who are closed indefinitely. Restaurants closed indefinitely. Pubs. Clothing stores in lots of countries. In some countries, the clothing manufacturers are closed. It's really variable by country which things have been put into hibernation, but they're simply not trading. Many other organisations are working flat out. The retailers, the food retailers, the pharmaceutical companies, people making the toilet paper and moving the toilet paper around the world, all working absolutely flat out. And then we have this middle enormous category of companies who are scrambling to operate in the new normal. So one of my clients is a restaurant chain. They had restaurants, takeaway and delivery. The restaurants are closed indefinitely. The takeaway is closed indefinitely. They're trying to work out how does the business function with delivery. So that is what I mean by scrambling to operate in the new normal. So I do a lot of running, and if you are on a long distance race, you're in a forest and you realise that you're lost, the very first thing you do is you stop to try to work out where you are and which direction should you be going in. Because if you just kept running, there is a 1 in 360-degree chance you're running in the wrong direction. There's a 50-50 chance you're running in completely the wrong direction. So whenever you don't know your surroundings, the first thing you should always do is pause and just look around you and decide what should happen. One of the first things that organisations should do is there anything inappropriate going on? And you should stop that. I am still getting emails from companies saying, do I want to book a cruise for next year? Do I want to book a flight? Do I want to book a holiday? I'm being offered exercise bicycles, which is possibly okay, but I'm being offered outdoor bicycles as well. I've got vouchers for meals recently coming through. All of that is automated marketing. Marketeers tend to have a cadence. It needs to stop. I'm also getting stuff from the research industry saying, really, you want to be doing this, you want to be doing this, and it's not appropriate. So look at all your marketing, look at your activities, and just pause anything which isn't appropriate. Then is there anything that isn't started? And this is much bigger than just insights or research. It really starts at the company level. Were we thinking of a new line extension? Did we have a new advertising campaign? Were we going to open some new stores? Were there some events we were going to hold? Were we thinking of running a competition? Pause all of them. It may be that you're going to stop them for quite a long time, but the first thing is pause them. None of those should be happening this week or next week or maybe the week after. And that's really what I mean by pause. It's a 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 week, depending on the industry, depending on the activity, while you get yourself reorganised. Were you thinking of changing your supplier? Your supplier for sandwiches maybe, your suppliers for cleaning, your suppliers for software, your suppliers for web hosting, your suppliers for your CX program, your suppliers for your tracking program. You probably want to pause all of those changes. Now is not the time to be going through the detail of what those should be, because firstly, they may be different in a week or two's time, but secondly, you want to simplify your life for the next few weeks so you can get really organised. Remember though, not everything can be sensibly paused. Anything that's continuous would require an action for you to go out and pause it. So if it's not inappropriate, keep it ticking over. Anything that's already in field, unless it's inappropriate, let it finish and have that ready to work with. So be sensible, but apply the pause button. Now, I'm asked quite often, should we be doing any research? Should we be collecting insights? And the answer is absolutely, massively yes. And the reason for that is everybody running every organisation in the world is flying blind. Nobody alive today running a company, running a government department, running an institution has managed in a situation like this before. The last time there was anything like this would have been maybe the Second World War, maybe it would have been the First World War and the Spanish flu. This is unprecedented. That word is really important to take on board at the moment. This situation is unprecedented. We have not lived through it. We've not researched it properly. We do not understand it. So every significant decision a company or organisation takes needs insights to improve the chance of it being the right decision. So what sort of research is needed? Well, I think the most important is employee research. You've got to start by making sure that your people are okay. How are your people? What do they need? What is working for them and what needs to change? And the best way to find that out is having some form of employee research. We need to understand the new normal. So how are our customers? What do they need? Beyond our customers, what do other people have as problems or needs? And maybe we can help tackle them. And there are some fantastic stories going around in the world at the moment where companies have stopped making one product and started another. A lot of clothing companies, a lot of whiskey companies, a lot of beer companies are now making hand sanitizer because there are people who have a need. A perfume company, Louis Vuitton, is making hand sanitizer. Formula One car companies are looking at how to make ventilators for the health services. So understand the new normal. What is it that people want more of? What is it they want less of? What is happening in their life? COVID-19 comms testing. I mentioned some of the brands that are shooting themselves in the foot with inappropriate messages. Governments are really struggling. One of the things I've noticed in three or four countries now is politicians struggling to get across what does essential mean. They say only essential workers should go to work. Only do essential travel. But they haven't made it clear what is meant by essential. They need comms testing to find out what is it that people are struggling with, how could they say it better, when we say this, what works. Before we recommend that people should only have a haircut that lasts 30 minutes, we better make sure that that actually is viable. All of that comms testing. You need to track your brand. Now, if you're trading, you'll need to do more tracking than if you're not trading. But you want to know whether you're salient still. Are you doing the right things? Who is receiving your messages? But lots of the continuous research projects need to change in this new normal. Maybe in the past you tracked something like good range of services, but that might be a completely irrelevant scale now. Now you might want to be tracking things like helps people like me and other positive things, and make sure that you're not seen as somebody taking advantage or doing price gouging. Everything needs pre-testing. You are going to do some activities which are new, but you don't understand the marketplace. You cannot trust your gut. This is the new normal. So the amount of testing you need to do, you're going to have new people using your app. So you need to do some more UX testing, and that UX testing needs to focus on the needs of people in this new normal. And we need research on research. We are not sure which of our traditional research techniques are reliable and which are not. Some of those rules will stay the same. Some will probably vary as people go to 2, 3, 4 weeks, 2, 3, 4 months maybe. Being isolated at home, it's going to potentially have some impact on the tools we use. So we need to keep an eye on those tools to make sure they're relevant. What about research that should stop? Well, right at the start of public concern about the crisis and the pandemic, there were several pharmaceutical companies and suppliers of pharmaceutical insights who said, we are not going to research doctors and nurses. They absolutely have enough on their plate. We don't want to distract those people. So that makes sense. Face to face. almost all face-to-face research should be converted to online or postponed or cancelled. Similarly, CATI conducted from central call centres is to be avoided. We don't want to take people into a call centre, sit them in rows next to each other, sharing a canteen, when there is an option like CATI from home as a much better way of doing that. Most of the research for a brand not trading. Now, I get lots of messages directly to me because I've talked about stopping research over the last week or two, and people are saying, no, look at history, Ray. People should always continue to advertise. They should always continue to research. But I'm looking at some clients now. I'm looking at some of the airlines, for example. They have put 60, 70 or 80% of their staff on unpaid leave, or they've released them. They're not in the building. 100% of their planes in some cases are not flying. The people who would read the research are not working. There is no money to pay for an extensive research program. There is no money to pay for advertising and marketing. There is very, very little money at all in those organisations. So I believe they should do a little bit of research. Maybe it's going to be social media research. Maybe it's syndicated research to find out whether the brand messages, because they should still be talking to the public. They should be trying to protect the environment, because what they're trying to do is hibernate the brand. And a hibernated brand is one you can restart. So some activities to help them restart, but it's going to be tiny for those companies who are not trading. Any research that is really focused on the pre-March 2020 world is going to be pretty irrelevant. So updatings, before and after comparisons, a lot of that sort of stuff isn't going to be so useful. Check, have a look at the programs you're doing and say, is that in there for legacy reasons? In which case, maybe it doesn't need to be there. And strategic research. We are living in tactical times. You're going to have a strategy, and the strategy is probably going to be staying alive. We're in this new normal, a time of uncertainty. If you do a segmentation now, or a conjoint study, a pricing study, create predictive models, they're going to be of limited short-term benefit, because we've got 1/3 of the world's population on lockdown. Maybe it'll be 2/3 in 2 weeks. Maybe it'll be 10% in 2 weeks. That is how different the world will be. So it's very hard to be strategic going into that situation. And if we collect data about segmentation now where everybody is working from home or they're at home not working, then how would we apply that segmentation after things get back to some sort of new normal? So I think there are basically 4 business models that I'm seeing going on around me and that people are looking at. They're hibernate, hunker down, pivot, or operate. Hibernate is where you close the business, you wait until you can trade again. So yeah, if you are a cruise company, you are not going to be selling cruises, you need to hibernate the company. That means that the ships have to be put on some sort of care and maintenance program, that you need to keep filing the legal documents and that sort of thing. There is no money coming in, so you've got to minimise the money going out until you can start again. And for cruise companies, it could be a long time before they're able to run viably again. So you've got to seek government assistance. Hunker down. If you think the recession will unwind in a few months or maybe a year, then what you can do is you can slash costs, you can keep the company ticking over, grab chances when they're available, and all you're thinking is around what are we going to do after the crisis. So we might be developing some new products, we might be changing the management structure. You are still going to need government assistance to get through this process, but that is another possibility. Another one is pivot. Stop doing X and start doing Y. For example, there is going to be a real growth, I believe, in delivery options. We saw this in China, talking to my friends who are based in China. There are lots more delivery companies now, people delivering things in different ways. There are going to be companies obviously making ventilators and some of the other supply services to the health service gowns, masks, gloves, protective equipment, personal protective equipment, and so on. Wouldn't surprise me to see companies moving out of one sector into online games. If we're going to have people isolated at home for months, then we may well see a growth in the game sector. They are probably still going to need government assistance to help with the transition from doing X to doing Y. And the final one is operate. Assume this is how things are going to be for a while. You don't know how long, weeks, months, years. You've got to cut costs. You've really got to focus on being agile. You've got to seek out where are the needs, and that's a really research-led process, and then meet those needs. And in particular, this would be one of my top tips that's not on the tip page: help your client keep their job. You want to keep your business, then focus on who it is who buys your services and see what you can do to improve their usefulness to their employer. And likewise, you are still going to need to seek government assistance. All four options probably require everybody that's not booming because they're a food retailer or they're a pharmaceutical company to get some form of government assistance to keep operating. I want to talk about the ecosystem, the insights ecosystem, the advertising ecosystem, the marketing ecosystem, because there will be a time after this crisis. We don't know what that time is going to be like, but we want to arrive at that point in time with the possibility still to do market research, with the possibility still to create advertising, with the possibility still to do PR, with the possibility to have sophisticated, effective, worthwhile marketing. We'll only do that if we keep the ecosystem alive. So the first thing I would say to all companies is pay your bills, especially to the smaller players, the freelancers, the recruiters and people like that. If you can, keep advertising, keep marketing, keep researching, but tailor it to the new normal. So all of those companies that are going to be trading really heavily because they're in the right sectors, you have a massive responsibility to keep your marketing, researching, promoting percentage the same, which would actually probably mean a growth in your total spend. Because otherwise, after the crisis, you are not going to have a range of choices. You're not going to have the sort of talent you have available to you now. And I'm going to show you a couple of really nice examples of how people are keeping advertising, keeping marketing, but tailoring it to the new normal on the next slide. Consider syndicated projects, because that is one way that things become more affordable. So could your trackers become syndicated with other people? Research on research. Maybe we could see all of the panel companies or the large research companies funding programs, or the associations funding programs, so that we could keep an eye on what research is working. You've got to think as well. So I've talked about people buying stuff in the first three, but now if you are in the doing selling, you've got to play your part. How can you reduce costs and deliver more value? Because that will keep the ecosystem around. We want to reward and promote the insights, the storytelling and the engagement. People are going to be busier than they used to be. If you are working, you are going to find that you are more distracted. One of the distractions I'm finding working from home is I'm watching the news more. I'm watching those terrible counts going up and the different things happening in the rest of the world. So it's hard to focus on the work. If we want the research, the insights, the marketing, all of that to be noticed, it's got to be even better in terms of storytelling and engagement. So here are some of those examples of people who are advertising still, but they're not doing it in the wrong way, which is just talking about their product and making more money. They're doing socially worthwhile things. So McDonald's in Brazil separated the arches to help emphasize social distancing. Coca-Cola's advertising board in Times Square, staying apart is the best way to say united. Here's a great one from Mercedes-Benz, and they are probably not going to be making cars in the near future. They won't be shipping cars across countries. They won't be selling cars. But they're playing their bit and they're showing that your car should stay at home. Great piece of creative. It's going to have an impact. It's going to help society. And it helps people remember the brand, and the brand is relevant and it cares about people like me. So here are a few tips before we move on to a summary in the Q&A. Focus on tactical usefulness and short-term ROI. Almost everything you do should be able to deliver value this month. Cancel all major changes. So what I would say is extend your contracts. Talk to the people providing your web hosting. Talk to the people providing your social media listening. Talk to the people providing your research programs, and just say, can we roll them forward for a period of time? I know we said we were going to retender, but let's retender in a few weeks or a few months when things become a little bit easier to understand. If you do have to stop a research project, hibernate it rather than cancel it. Now, what's the difference? Hibernate it isn't quite as cheap because you want to make sure that you've got everything put to sleep in a situation where you can bring it back to life again. And that's important. So think about, what do you need to do to hibernate a project if you do have to stop doing it. Obviously, move your face-to-face online. Think about taking all of the bespoke elements out of projects. Often that extra 20%, which is what you really like, can cost 80%. Those extra questions you put on the survey, that extra form of formatting, reporting, debriefing, whatever it is, those special hard-to-reach samples. Look at those, because you may find you can save quite a lot of money by just simplifying the design a little bit. One of the questions I'm asked the most from client side is, should we pause research? Because surely a lot of the data we're going to collect at the moment will be unreliable. People are normally doing their surveys when they're doing a test or whatever in their normal everyday life, where they go to work, they come home, they have family time, they go out in the evening. Now people are spending day after day after day in their houses. Will the data be the same? And the answer is, it might be the same, in which case you can use it, or it might be different, in which case you have to use it. Because if people have changed, if people are responding differently, that is the new normal. You've got to live with it. You've got to provide your services in that context. So absolutely, if the measurements are unstable, you really just got to live with it and assume that is your marketplace. If you've got a community, this is a fantastic time. Find out about how those people are before you do anything else with that community. Find out about the people, talk to them how they are. Is there anything you can do to help them? And then maximize the use of the community. Brand and ad trackers, change them to make them relevant. Look at how you might be able to use social media options to add value to those projects, to replace parts of those projects. Make them focused on what you need to know and what people need to tell you. CX programs. Yeah, I think many of them, not all of them, but many of them are going to need changes. I think they're going to need to be more focused on the person and less on the service and the product. If you are not having so many interactions with people, it's going to be less around likelihood to recommend and how good was the last service, and more about what is the brand doing, how do I feel the brand, to some extent almost merging with the concept of the brand tracker. In summary, we are in an indefinite new normal. Don't think I can just wait till this is over. Get on with living your life in the now for however long it exists. And when we get to a new normal, then we'll deal with that. You've got to decide whether you're going to hibernate, hunker down, pivot, or operate. Definitely hit the pause button for a week, 2 weeks, decide what changes to make and implement them. Stop anything that's irrelevant or unviable. Remember, all organisations are flying blind. They need insights. Be loud about this. Tell people that you are going to make terrible mistakes. Point to the mistakes that the politicians are making, because those are very public, and say your brand is going to make those mistakes too. What are the priorities? Number one priority for me, make sure you're doing employee research. Then research that helps you understand the new normal. You've got to pre-test everything because your gut is unreliable. And then we need new forms of tracking, new forms of CX, new ethnographies. We need to check the research on research. So what we're doing is right, relevant, and useful. Please stay safe, be kind, and please protect the research insights marketing ecosystem.